Bullets ripped through the air like angry wasps. Windows exploded. Cars shook as rounds slammed into metal and glass. In the middle of a quiet Los Angeles street, two men dressed in black body armor stood in the open, firing non-stop at police. Officers ducked behind patrol cars that were being torn apart piece by piece. Their pistols felt useless. Their shotguns barely slowed the attackers. For long minutes, it looked like the police were losing a war in broad daylight. People watching from nearby homes could not believe what they were seeing. This was not a movie. This was real. The sound of gunfire echoed for blocks. Helicopters circled above as smoke rose from damaged cars. One officer was hit and fell to the ground. Another crawled to safety while bullets sparked around him. The two robbers kept moving forward, calm and steady, as if nothing could stop them. And then, just when it seemed the situation could not get worse, one of the gunmen began walking straight toward a line of trapped officers. That was the moment the city held its breath. Hours earlier, the day had started quietly. It was February 28, 1997, a clear Friday morning in North Hollywood. Traffic moved as usual. People went to work. Inside a Bank of America branch on Laurel Canyon Boulevard, employees were starting a normal business day. No one knew that within minutes, this place would become the center of one of the most violent shootouts in American police history. Two men arrived at the bank just before 9:20 a.m. Their names were Emil Mataserano and Larry Phillips Jr. They were not ordinary robbers. They had planned this for months. They wore heavy body armor that covered their chests, legs, and arms. They carried high-powered rifles with large magazines filled with ammunition. They believed they were ready for anything. When they entered the bank, they shouted orders and fired shots into the ceiling to scare everyone. Customers and workers dropped to the floor. The men tried to get into the vault, but things did not go as planned. The vault timer slowed them down. Outside, someone had already called the police. The first patrol cars arrived quickly. Officers took positions, expecting a normal robbery. Then the gunman walked out of the bank and opened fire without warning. The sound was shocking. Police cars were hit again and again. Officers realized right away that their standard weapons could not match what they were facing. As the gunfight spread across the street, the robbers moved with purpose. They fired hundreds of rounds, reloading calmly in the open. Police returned fire when they could, but most of their bullets bounced off the armor. Civilians ran for cover. Some were trapped inside nearby buildings, praying the bullets would stop. Inside the chaos, officers made fast choices. Some ran into a nearby gun store to borrow rifles. Others tried to rescue wounded partners under fire. The radio filled with urgent calls for help. This was no longer a simple robbery. It was a full-scale battle. One robber was hit in the leg. He stumbled but kept firing. The other walked across the street, shooting as he moved, forcing officers to fall back. The noise never seemed to end. It felt like the street itself was under attack. After nearly 44 minutes, the fight began to turn. Police rifles finally arrived. One gunman collapsed from blood loss after being hit several times. The second, badly wounded and surrounded, took his own life to avoid capture. The shooting stopped as suddenly as it had begun. When it was over, the street looked like a war zone. More than a dozen officers were injured. Miraculously, no civilians were killed. The city was stunned. Police leaders knew something had to change. This shootout would reshape law enforcement forever. It exposed a deadly gap between criminals and police equipment. New training, new weapons, and new tactics would soon follow across the nation. But questions still hung in the air. How did two men get so heavily armed? Why were police so unprepared? And could something like this ever happen again? As the smoke cleared and the sirens faded, Los Angeles realized it had witnessed a moment that would never be forgotten. And what happened next would change policing in America in ways no one expected. Stay with the story. The next chapter goes deeper into who these men were, how they planned this attack, and the warning signs that were missed before the first shot was fired. The first burst of gunfire outside the bank was not the beginning of this story. Long before police were pinned behind cars, long before bullets flew across North Hollywood, two men were quietly preparing for violence. Their plan did not start that morning. It started years earlier, in anger, obsession, and a deep hatred of authority. Larry Phillips Jr. was known to police long before the shootout. He had been arrested for robberies and gun crimes. He hated law enforcement and talked openly about fighting the system. Friends later said he believed police were enemies, not protectors. Emil Matasereno was different, but just as dangerous. He was quiet, highly technical, and obsessed with weapons. He spent hours modifying guns, testing magazines, and building homemade body armor strong enough to stop bullets. Together, they trained like soldiers. They practiced shooting at ranges and in open areas. They timed reloads. They studied police response times. They chose North Hollywood because it had wide streets, clear lines of sight, and nearby escape routes. They believed they could outgun the police, escape, and do it again.
On the morning of February 28, 1997, they loaded their car with thousands of rounds of ammunition. They wore layers of armor that weighed over 40 pounds. Their rifles could fire rapidly and accurately, far beyond what most patrol officers carried. In their minds, this was not just a robbery, it was a test of power. When police arrived at the bank, officers expected a routine call. They carried pistols and shotguns, standard equipment at the time. No one warned them they were about to face automatic rifles and armor that could stop handgun rounds. Within seconds, officers realized they were outmatched. As the gunfight continued, fear mixed with courage. Officers stayed in the open to protect civilians. Some crawled across the pavement under fire to pull wounded partners to safety. Others emptied magazine after magazine, hoping to hit an unprotected spot. Radio calls grew louder and more desperate as bullets kept coming. One officer was hit in the neck but survived because the bullet struck just under his helmet. Another was shot in the leg and dragged himself behind cover. Patrol cars, meant to provide safety, were shredded by gunfire. Engines failed, windshields vanished, metal doors folded like paper. Inside nearby buildings, people hid on the floor. Some watched from windows, frozen in fear. A television news helicopter broadcast the scene live, showing the entire nation what was happening. Viewers could see police pinned down while the gunmen walked freely, firing again and again. At one point, officers realized they had no choice. Several ran into a local gun store and borrowed AR-15-style rifles. Others grabbed rifles from armored vehicles that were still far away. This moment would later become one of the biggest lessons of the shootout. Police were brave, but bravery was not enough without the right tools. The tide slowly began to turn. One gunman, Matasereno, was shot multiple times in the legs. Blood poured from wounds that armor did not cover. He collapsed near his car, unable to move. Officers could not reach him immediately because of the danger. He later died from blood loss before medical help could safely arrive. Phillips, the second gunman, was hit in the hand and chest. His armor was failing. Police rifles finally penetrated. He retreated into a nearby neighborhood, still firing, still dangerous. Officers closed in carefully, knowing one mistake could cost a life. Then, the gunfire stopped. Phillips was found with a fatal self-inflicted gunshot wound. After nearly 44 minutes, the shootout was over. The silence felt unreal. Smoke hung in the air. Sirens filled the streets. Officers stood exhausted, shaken, and angry. More than a dozen police officers were injured. Miraculously, no civilians were killed. The city of Los Angeles was safe again, but nothing felt the same. In the hours that followed, police leaders, city officials, and the public asked hard questions. How did this happen? Why were two criminals able to challenge an entire police force? What if there had been more attackers?
The answers would change policing forever. Training would change, weapons would change, tactics would change. But those changes came because of what happened next in the aftermath, when the full impact of the North Hollywood Shootout became clear. And that impact was far bigger than anyone expected. The street was finally quiet, but the damage told a different story. Police cars sat ruined, glass scattered everywhere, bullet holes covering walls, signs, and storefronts. Officers stood still for a moment, trying to understand what they had just survived. 44 minutes of non-stop gunfire had changed everything. As investigators walked through the scene, the scale became clear. More than 2,000 rounds had been fired. The robbers had carried enough weapons and ammunition to fight for hours. Police counted rifle magazines, body armor plates, and modified guns left behind. This was not a crime of chance. It was a planned assault on law enforcement. News spread fast across the country. People watched replays of officers pinned down while criminals walked freely in the open. Many were shocked. Others were angry. One question echoed everywhere. Why were police so outgunned? At the time, most patrol officers carried only pistols and shotguns. These weapons were designed for close-range encounters, not long street battles against rifles. The shootout exposed a dangerous gap between what police had and what criminals could get. That gap could no longer be ignored. Within months, police departments across the United States began to change. Patrol rifles became standard. Officers received better training for active shooter situations. Body armor improved. New tactics focused on teamwork, distance, and stopping threats faster. The North Hollywood Shootout became a case study in police academies nationwide. The event also changed how the public saw crime. This was not a hidden act in the dark. It happened in full daylight, on live television, in a quiet neighborhood. It showed that extreme violence could appear anywhere without warning. For the officers involved, the memory never faded. Many later spoke about fear, confusion, and the pressure of protecting civilians while being outmatched. Some carried physical injuries for life. Others carried mental scars. Yet they also carried pride. They stood their ground when it mattered most. Families of the wounded officers praised their bravery. City leaders honored them. But the praise did not erase the danger they faced that day. It only confirmed how close the outcome had been. The robbers were gone, but the questions remained. Could this happen again? Would police always be ready? How many other criminals were planning something similar? The North Hollywood Shootout became a turning point. It forced law enforcement to prepare for the worst, not the average. It reminded everyone that criminals adapt, and police must adapt faster. Even decades later, the footage still feels unreal. Two armored men walking through gunfire, officers returning fire from behind cars that could not protect them, a city frozen in shock. This was not just a robbery gone wrong, it was a warning. And that warning still matters today, because somewhere, someone may be planning their own version of this moment, and the lessons learned on that street in 1997 may be the reason it never reaches this level again. But if history has taught us anything, it is this. When one line is crossed, everything changes, and once the first shot is fired, there is no going back. If you want to understand how close America came to a far worse ending that day, and why this single event reshaped modern policing forever, then stay alert. Some moments never truly end, they only echo. The most chilling moment did not come during the gunfire, it came after. As police reviewed the evidence, they realized how close the city had come to something far worse. If even one of those gunmen had reached a crowded area, if more police had been hit early, if the robbers had chosen a different path, the outcome could have been catastrophic. Investigators learned that the plan had almost gone further. The gunmen had talked about bombing the bank if they could not get enough money. They had discussed fighting police until the end. Their car was packed with weapons, ammo, and gear far beyond what was used that day. The shootout ended not because the plan failed, but because the bodies of the attackers finally did. This realization shook law enforcement deeply. The North Hollywood Shootout was no longer seen as a rare event. It was seen as a warning. Criminals were evolving. They were studying police tactics. They were preparing for war, not crime. Across the United States, police departments moved fast. Patrol cars were upgraded. Officers were trained to respond to active shooters within minutes. New rules allowed rifles to be carried in vehicles instead of locked away. Communication systems were improved so officers could react as one unit instead of many individuals. But change was not instant. Many departments struggled with funding and public debate. Some questioned whether police should carry more powerful weapons. Others argued they had no choice. The images from North Hollywood answered that question clearly. Without equal tools, lives were at risk. For the people who lived near Laurel Canyon Boulevard, the memory stayed close. Bullet marks remained on buildings for years. Residents remembered hiding behind walls, holding children tight, wondering if they would survive the morning. Even when the street returned to normal, something invisible had changed. The officers involved went on with their careers, but none forgot that day. Some later said they felt fear like never before. Others said training took over and carried them through. All agreed on one thing: they never wanted to feel that helpless again. The shootout also changed how the public viewed police danger. Many who had never thought about officer safety suddenly understood the risks. The image of patrol cars being destroyed by rifle fire became a symbol of vulnerability, not power. Years later, the North Hollywood Shootout is still studied in police academies, military courses, and security training worldwide. It is replayed not for shock, but for lessons: where to take cover, when to advance, how fast a situation can explode. It also left behind a deeper question: what happens when violence becomes performance? The event was broadcast live. Millions watched it unfold in real time. That exposure raised concerns about copycat crimes and the role of media in modern violence. Yet the lasting impact was preparation. Because of what happened that day, countless officers since have been better equipped, faster, more protected, more ready. The street where it happened looks ordinary now. Cars pass by, people walk dogs, the bank is quiet, but history sits there, unseen. It reminds us that safety can vanish in seconds. The North Hollywood Shootout was not just a crime, it was a turning point. It forced a system to adapt or fail. It proved that preparation saves lives, and it showed how thin the line is between control and chaos.
What makes this story so haunting is not just the bullets or the fear. It is the fact that it almost went further, almost became deadlier, almost rewrote history in a much darker way. And that is why this story still matters. Because the next warning may not come with time to prepare, because the next moment may be even faster, and because the lessons learned in 1997 may be the reason the next ending is different. If you think this was the most dangerous police shootout ever caught on camera, wait until you hear what nearly happened next. If this moment in history shocked you, remember this: the North Hollywood Shootout was not just about two gunmen and one street. It was about how fast ordinary life can turn into chaos and how close a city came to disaster. What happened in 1997 forced police across America to change before something even worse could happen. But this was not the last warning. Similar threats still exist, and the line between safety and tragedy remains thin. Every lesson learned that day came at a cost, paid in fear, blood, and bravery. Stay aware, stay informed, because the next story might not end the same way.